Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satgurum Pranatosmyaham. So we said that in an ordinary life, there is no place to say, I am Brahman. This is superficial. When things need your attention, then you simply attend to them. There is a place for study. There's a place for working through life. In fact, 99% of our life is really just attending to what needs to be done. And so the Jnani does not get this confused. Their understanding is permanent. They are abiding in that knowledge. They recognize the truth of all things. They are at peace. They do not make a mistake about what is existence, what is consciousness, what is sentiency. They know this very clearly. They look at a wall and they see that this wall is but intelligence, and intelligence is but existence and awareness. Now the word, sometimes he or she might hear others speak of this word consciousness, which might be confusing to some, and they mistake this word consciousness for sentiency. And this is not what Vedanta is talking about. Consciousness does not mean sentiency. It does not mean when we say, or as we are trained to believe, I am consciousness. There is consciousness in a person. Now they're in a coma, they have no more consciousness, thereby the consciousness has gone. This is not the word what consciousness is referring to. So for this reason, we sometimes use the word awareness. And I know how it is at the beginning. When you hear this word consciousness, the mind is still throwing some ideas, what it means, and it cannot reconcile. It's not relating to what consciousness really means. It's not relating to what awareness really means. It's still hearing it. It heard it before from other teachers, from left and right. And so when another teacher says consciousness, it now borrows all those ideas it's heard from other teachers, and it tries to reconcile everything and tries to fit this teaching in what you've heard before. We said clearly, when we come to Advaita Vedanta, you need to throw your expectations away, your ideas away. It doesn't work like that. We said clearly, all that is here is consciousness, existence. That means there's one reality called Brahman. Call it whatever you want, just call it reality. And that reality is understood through two standpoints. Not that there are different standpoints. If you look at a wall, you're not going to see something, that's alive there. Why? Because the wall doesn't have a subtle body. Therefore, you cannot see a wall expressing kind of dynamism and all that. The reason why the human being can demonstrate, when we say conscious being, is because we have one additional attribute called the subtle body, and the subtle body can reflect consciousness. It can manifest consciousness in a form of this sentient being. But do not confuse sentiency with consciousness. Now, the way to understand this is, again, there's one reality called Brahman, and this reality is understood through two standpoints. How? If you look at anything right now, it exists, doesn't it? And if it changes into something else, whatever it changes into, it also exists. So now, while the name and the form will change, the existence will never leave. Even if it changes into something that's very liquidy or something very fluid or something very gaseous or very spacious, it doesn't matter. It's still changed into something. So something still continues to exist. That existence is the reality. The modification is the prakriti. We were very clear of this. And don't think that modification called prakriti is different from existence. The existence we use the example very clearly of, in this sample, is the clay. Now, what we tend to confuse is where is existence? It's everywhere. It's modifying in a form of what you see, a wall, a tree, a person, a thought, an emotion. Another way to understand this reality is we say it is not only existence. That means it is what existence is it? It is an awareful existence. How do you show this? Simple. How do you show that there is awareness or consciousness in this wall? Tell me. Right now, how do we do that? Based on all that we spoke about.
Because it exists.
It exists, okay?
It needs intelligence to sustain itself.
Excellent. It needs intelligence to sustain itself. Because a rock is an intelligent putting together of materials, intelligent putting together of atoms, intelligent putting together of quarks, etc. So I can't find a wall, but I can find existence. I can't find minerals, but I can find existence. I can't find the minerals or the atoms, but I can find existence. So I can't find a form, but I can always find existence. And when you look at this wall or anything in this world, you see that it's an intelligent putting together. Otherwise, it can't put itself together. What is going to put the world together unless it's intelligence, knowledge, and power? And that knowledge and power cannot be outside a conscious being. Even your knowledge and power cannot be outside a conscious being. Now, when I say conscious being, do not let your mind imagine some being with limited form and you are that big form who is now sleeping or meditating somewhere out there and all this is happening inside you. This is not Advaita vision. This is fantasy. So you have to understand that there is no uniqueness anywhere. Everything is already right here, right here, right here. Everything is resolving into intelligence. And that intelligence exists, doesn't it? Because we said at every single level it exists. How can intelligence be unless it exists? So it also depends upon existence. And that intelligence cannot put, being existent, it cannot put things together unless there's also consciousness. There's a conscious being in which intelligence can do its various things. It's that simple. Existence awareness is the reality. Everything else depends upon that reality. It's that simple. So now sometimes we hear these terms, sentiency. We're not speaking and mixing up consciousness with sentiency. Sentiency, we said clearly, is a product of prana. Product of thoughts, product of emotions. That one you call sentient being. Like a robot put together, right? Infused by electricity. That electricity makes the robot sentient. It's that simple. Now, sometimes we use the electricity in a different manner. Now we use it for prana. We can also use it as though consciousness. So you got all this, function of the robot, and you've got the sensors and the microphones, and all these things are going on. But and the robot is just laying vertically, horizontally on the bed. Okay? And then when you send that electricity through it, when it's infused, when it's blessed with consciousness, it becomes alive. Everything, all of its functions become alive. It's able to now think, it's able to walk, it's able to cry, it's able to ask questions. So consciousness blesses. It is that because of which all things work. So consciousness and awareness is the reality. There is no different kind of consciousness like sentiency consciousness. This is science. We're not speaking of science definitions, we're speaking of Vedantic definitions. So having said this, suppose you were to produce a question or a doubt. What doubt would that be now? About what we just explained in reference to this reality, consciousness and existence, if there is any. Suppose you go home and you still walk away with doubt and you say, I've been in this course for 10 days, but there's some doubts. What doubt would that be? And suppose you were asked this question in the class, and now that you're at home, you said, I'm so glad that I had the courage to actually pose that doubt. And then the teacher might reassure you and say, it's okay, I'm waiting for that. My email is available 24/7. Okay, so that's there. Now, when this takes more and more, deeper and assimilated, it's not going to happen overnight. So don't worry. If things are not completely clear in this course, there's much time. Remember this, you're going to live for many more years. Okay? And and you know how many years, in 1 year, how much change can happen. So be patient. There's nothing to worry about.
We as humans have a causal body. My question is, where does that end? Do plants have a causal body?
Where does a causal body end?
Where does it end that a being has a causal body? For example, a rock has a causal body.
No. Plant, anything sentient. When I say the word sentient, it means anything with a subtle body. When I say subtle body, it means anything that's able to respond to the environment. The plant observes the sun, it turns towards the sun. There's a response mechanism. A rock cannot do that. So anything that responds at whatever capacity, that has a subtle body. Therefore, even a small bacteria, it responds because it's by definition a bacteria. It has a subtle body. Okay? Was that the question?
Yeah.
What did you say? Sorry, anything that responds to...
Anything that responds has a subtle body.
Oh, okay.
Simple.
That responds.
Yeah. Which is then called sentient.
Yeah.
What is a subtle body?
The subtle body is your mind. Mind. Thoughts, emotions. Full stop. Yeah, easy. Coming back to the Jnani's recognition of his nature, now we're investigating what happens to all those things that are, what happens to your past causes? Because we know that when there's a person who has done many things in the past, they have to get their fair share of pain and suffering. They have to get their new body, right, to continue that process. Now, what it says is that for the unwise person, that sense of I have to get my return on investment, that is absolutely real because you see yourself as one single individual in this universe. So for you, it's real because you still take that snake as real. For you, the snake is real. There's no snake, but for you, there is a snake. So for the Jnani, it says this prarabdha is like a dream state. Now you're going to say, what is prarabdha? Prarabdha just means momentum of past actions that are fructifying in the present. Let me simplify that. Stuff I've done in the past that I'm now experiencing today. If I hugged you yesterday, I see you today, you go, oh, let me hug you back. So all those things that I've done in the past, it's fructifying, the results of fructifying constantly in the present. So now it says here, the relation to this momentum, to this prarabdha, the person who has to get their fair share of suffering, the relationship to that person is like a dream state. And then it says, verse 97, Upadhi tadatmya vihina kevala brahma atmana eva atmani tishtataha munehe prarabdha sadbhava katha na yukta swapna artha sambandha katha eva jagrataha. The talk of existence of prarabdha for a sage who remains in himself as the non-dual Brahman, free from identification with the upadhis, is not proper. It is like talking of a connection for the waker with the dream objects. Yeah. Why is this so? Because the person who's done things in the dream and committed some, good things in the dream and committed some, non-virtuous things in the dream, that person entirely goes away when you wake up. That means you realize you have no connection to that person. This is the thread that we ended with yesterday. So realizing now that the real I had no connection to that doer, that person, that actor who I thought I was, immediately no longer is any of those consequences passed on to you, because you have recognized that you are free of the person who you thought you were.
Is the subtle body then dissolved in Ishvara?
The subtle body only dissolves into 5 elements upon Videha Mukti, when the Jivan Mukta drops his body. Until the body is alive, the Jivan Mukta's body is alive, the subtle body still remains.
Yeah, but after death,
It totally dissolves into 5 elements.
when a normal person dies, the subtle body exists.
The subtle body just continues and goes into another physical body. Okay? So,
So when you talk to the deceased people, it's to the subtle body.
yeah.
So I do have a question about that. Like, I don't know, 100,000 years ago, there were maybe 10,000 people all over the world.
They were what?
10,000
Okay.
human beings all over the world.
Okay.
100,000 years ago. Now there are, I don't know how many billions.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the subtle body?
So that works very simply, because you see, the people that we think, they're also insects and plants, and also in other lokas. So there is an infinite amount of jivas reshuffled around different worlds. And sometimes they fall to earth and then is a plant, as an insect. This is according to the Vedic vision. As a human being, if you're lucky, because we said the 3 blessings, one of them is a human body. So it's not like a new jiva is being created. There's no new subtle bodies being created. All already exists right now. Now, of course, someone's going to ask immediately, so then, does that mean that we can never, or if we all get moksha, does this jiva go away? You suppose everyone gets moksha, -1 subtle body, another subtle body. Eventually, you have less and less jivas. No, because there's infinite amount of jivas. 1 minus infinity, infinity minus 1 equals infinity. So it will never end. This is, because see, since this creation was since beginningless beginning, it would have happened already. We would have not had any jivas by now, because there would be an endless amount of time to exhaust it. So the fact that we still have as many jivas, billions, it shows you that there's no such thing as exhaustion. Okay? So, you see, if you believe, look at this, that you're an individual entity, then you have prarabdha karma. Because you think you're apart from the whole, and that part has done action, and thus that little individual has consequences to bear. But in reality, all that is here is consciousness. But I don't know that. So if I don't know that all that is here is one, and I see myself as different from that one, who is all pervasive, then naturally I will have prarabdha on me. And then now the verse clarifies that statement and says, for an enlightened sage, the talk of prarabdha is not proper. So now let me explain that why. Why is that? Because from the standpoint of consciousness, Atma, does consciousness have legs to walk, arms, speech? Does it have any way to communicate or hurt someone? No. And consciousness is all that is. So not only is consciousness without a means to hurt, because all that is here is consciousness. How can you hurt yourself if you're the only thing that is? So by this definition, if all that is here is one, then who are you? What is your nature? You are that very one. You are spotless, because consciousness never did a thing in its entire being of existence. It doesn't have means to conduct. And you are that consciousness. So you've never done anything. If you've never done anything, then you do not have prarabdha by definition. Thus, the moment you shift your eye from this thinking that you are as good as this person to that which is akarta, not a doer, abhokta, not an enjoyer, which is all pervasive, at once you become the spotless one. Not that you become it, but you discover that you are that very spotless one without any past causes to work out. Because that character was never you to begin with. And then it says, then why do we speak of prarabdha karma? Why do we have this conversation? And the answer is because it is there to pacify the mind of an ajnani. Because an ajnani still looks at themselves as one single person who then looks at other people and say, why is there suffering in this world? And then you have to answer that question. And you say, because of past causes. So what are you doing? You're giving reality to the past, which is mithya. You're giving reality to prarabdha, which is mithya. You're giving reality to the person, which is mithya. So you have to provisionally give reality to these principles in order to appease the mind of an ajnani. If you just say to them, there's no prarabdha, there's no past, there's no sanchita, this is all just modifications of prakriti, which has no reality apart from consciousness, that's not good enough. So you have to lead them slowly and show them that, yeah, there is prarabdha. You got prarabdha to work out. Whereas for a jnani, this prarabdha, it's just a conversation. It has no real value. It's like talking about this pot. Let's glorify the pot. Let's, put pot on a sale, auction sale, and we're all speaking about it. And someone's just sitting in the background, relaxed and going, you're just speaking about a block of clay. And they're all fighting over this pot and paying $1 million for this thing. And you're going, okay, this is how it is. Until the moment you gain the knowledge, what happens to you in that auction house? The moment you gain the knowledge of this pot, you're out of there. The value for prarabdha karma has been lost. It was just a term that people valued and spoke about, and they used it to cope with life. Because they needed some reason. Why is there suffering? Why are people like this? Why can you have two people born and one is very lucky and one just keeps on falling and tripping and breaking bones? Why is that? Prarabdha karma. Therefore, in that sense, a transactional sense, it has a purpose. Whereas, verse 98, the self has nothing to do with it. Ajaha nityaha iti brute shrutihi amogha vak tad atmana tishtataha asya kutaha prarabdha kalpana. The infallible words of the scriptures say that the self is unborn and not conditioned by time. For the one who lives identified with that self alone, how can prarabdha be attributed to such a sage? Now let's analyze this. It says the self is ajaha, unborn, and nityaha, eternal. So look at this. What does it mean to say to be born? I am born. I'm born for the first time. It means you went from a state of non-existence to existence. So this is a problem because there is only existence. So how can existence, which you are, how can existence come into existence if there's only existence? It's like saying, when did awareness become aware? When did the present moment begin? What? When did the present moment begin? It's a contradiction of the statement. So if you were never born, then how can you have prarabdha karma? And here's what it really means. See, when you are born for the first time ever, what does that mean? that which is born in something else. Right? That's what it means to be born, from one thing into another. That means now there's two things. The moment you are born into something else, that which is born now has to interface, has to interact with the world in which it's born with. So it's two things. But there are no two things. So how can you say that anything was born for the first time? And thus, because I was born for the first time, I started to now interact this world in which I was born with, and I started to accumulate punya and papam. But there's no two things here. So there was nothing born for the first time. And if there was nothing born for the first time, there's no second entity. You're not a second entity who ever did anything to something else, because there was no something else. You alone were. If you alone were, then how can you have done things to other things? Not possible. If you have never done anything to anything but the one existence, how can you have prarabdha karma? Because prarabdha karma implies it's another entity that is born, that you now take as real, but it's not. And thereby, how then could prarabdha touch it? So let me simplify this. Okay, suppose everything I said is a little bit complex, because we're using a little bit of logic here. Suppose it's a little bit complex. So let me drop it down a little bit. And then he says, how then could this prarabdha touch it? Kutaha prarabdha kalpana. Okay. Look at this now. What does prarabdha for you to receive a slap on your face? We call this papam. Or a hug, we call this punyam. For that to happen, it requires change. It requires time, doesn't it? Right now, I get a hug. That required time, that required change. So prarabdha requires change and time. But what is your nature? That which is changeless, not bound by time. So then how can karma modify that which is changeless? Because, see, suppose that awareness, suppose every time you did something, we call it exhausting your karma. Suppose you were as good as prarabdha karma. Suppose. What would that mean? Every single time prarabdha exhausts, your awareness would exhaust. That means you become less and less and less conscious. But it doesn't. Things happen, you get a nice, not a nice slap, but sometimes a harsh slap, you get a hug, you continue the same being, same consciousness as before. Nothing changes. So prarabdha karma, that is the causal body, it has no effect on you. Because prarabdha karma, we said, is in the causal body. So causal body is constantly exhausting, and filling in with new prarabdha karma, but you remain changeless. Thereby we show you're even free of your causal body. Verse 99. Prarabdha itself is an illusion. Okay, what is prarabdha? Tell me, what is prarabdha? Momentum of the past action. Can someone else simplify that even further?
Whatever I experience now is coming from the past.
Yeah, results from the past. Results. Causal body, sure. I just want to make sure we all get it. Verse 99. Sharirasya api prarabdha kalpana bhrantihi evahi adhyastasya kutaha sattvam asatvasya kutaha janihi ajatasya kutaha nashaha prarabdham asataha kutaha. And then it says here, prarabdha, you can also put here free will. Prarabdha / free will for the body is a delusion. As a superimposed thing has no real existence. Where is birth for that which has no independent existence? Where is destruction for that which is unborn? Where is prarabdha for that which is unreal? Notice it doesn't say here that prarabdha or free will is asat, an illusion. Oh, we don't have free will, it's an illusion. It doesn't say that. It says it is mithya. What is mithya? It is experientially available, but factually non-existent.
I don't understand the sentence. Where's birth for that which has no independent existence?
Yes, in other words, there's no birth for that which has no independent existence.
Doesn't have independent existence? Is independent?
Yes, so there's no birth for existence because it's independent.
But the no doesn't make sense to me, does it?
So in other words, just rephrase that. That which has an independent existence, for that it has no birth.
That's what the sentence says. It's
No, for me makes sense. Where is birth for that which has no independent existence? In other words, independent existence has no birth.
Yeah.
Now let's clarify this a little bit more. It says, prarabdha for the body is a delusion. Why? Because as a superimposed thing has no real existence. What is superimposed thing here? Prarabdha and the body. Okay? So what does superimposition mean again? Remember we used the example of a snake and a rope. So what's the purpose of a snake and a rope? Before this, it's a real snake. You see a snake because it's nighttime. For you, it's a snake. For you, it's prarabdha karma. Definitely. After you throw knowledge onto the snake, it's no longer, there was no snake to begin with. It's just a rope. So there was never any snake to begin with, was there? For whom did a snake exist? For whom did prarabdha exist? It existed for me who took it as good as a snake due to not knowing that all that is here is one without a second. There's no such thing as prarabdha karma or free will. It's just another concept that we use in this world to explain how this reality works. It's for transactional reasons. So what truly disappears, is it the snake that disappears or your era? The era. Because you can't say that the snake disappeared. The snake was never there to begin with. The era was producing the existence, the apparent existence of a snake. The era of my true nature as awareness, as that which is free, was producing this idea that I was an individual who had past stuff to resolve. That's called prarabdha karma. I've got past stuff to resolve. I need to go and say sorry. I need to go and, repent. I need to ask for forgiveness. Oh Lord, please don't send me to hell. I want to go to heaven. This is because your identity is still in the snake. And so, to impute prarabdha onto you, it's erroneous. It's like worrying about a dream character. I dreamt of a person last night and he was in very big trouble and he fell inside, a hole in the hospital, was there and his life was on the line and I was so worried and concerned. And then you wake up, the concern is gone. But in the dream, there was a concern there. So to worry about your prarabdha karma, of those results that are coming onto me, what does that imply? You're as good as the body. That's why it says prarabdha for the body is a delusion. To say I have prarabdha, I have past stuff to resolve. I have past things to forgive. I have many more things to work out for the next lifetime. I have a reason to come back the next lifetime. This is all based on an error. And it's reinforcing, oh, it's my prarabdha karma. Oh, it's my karma. Every time you say it's my karma, what are you saying? There's an individual being who is separate from everything else, who has their individual causes. This is a big one, because we're so used to saying, this is my karma. Oh, my karma. Go ahead, say that, and keep on reinforcing the individuality, the very thing that you want to get rid of. So from now on, we can use this teaching to say, I don't have this prarabdha karma. This is not coming to me. This slap, this hug is not coming to me. It's coming to a person. It's coming to mithya, a person, a fictional character, a dream character, who has begun its journey since beginningless time. Let it come. It cannot be stopped because I do not control the circumstances. I don't control what is yet to come. You can't stop it. Once you shoot the arrow is going to shoot and hit the target. So there are many more things that this body will receive, punyam and papam. But remember, it doesn't touch you. You are the spotless one. Then says, where is birth for that which has no independent existence? Okay, to explain this now. Is a wave in the ocean, is that a new substance? No. So can you then say that the wave is born? Only if you take the wave as the reality. But the truth of the wave is the water, that which was there way before the wave was born, while the wave lasts, and long after the wave has crashed. So the wave is born? No, because all that is ever-present water. So in that same way, can you say the body got born? I got born. Because that implies that you are an independently existing thing. But you're not. You're just made of this. Your body is made of atoms. Atoms that make up the entire world. They make up everything else. And those atoms are nothing but intelligence. And intelligence is nothing but consciousness. So then who is then born? Tell me, who's born here? Why are you celebrating your birthday then? Okay, it's a cultural thing. But in actuality, nothing is ever born. Now, if nothing is ever born, that means you're not an independently existing being. Then how can you have prarabdha karma? How can you have separate causes added onto me? An individual me. And where is destruction for that which is unborn? For what can there be destruction? What experiences destruction? That which is born. You cannot have destruction for what is unborn. You can only have destruction for the wave. If you think you're the wave that's born, that can have destruction. So naturally the wave will have fear of death. But what's the truth of the wave? It is the water, that which has no destruction, because the water was there all along. So, what does this mean? Death for a Jnani? Death too is mithya. A very scary mithya. A very scary snake. But it's nothing but just another modification, another appearance of Prakriti. An appearance of Prakriti of the person going vertical to horizontal. Therefore, death too loses meaning. There is no such thing as death. These are just names that we add to work out what's going on in this transactional universe. You've got prarabdha karma. You've got free will. There is death of that friend of mine. These are all just concepts, but it's nothing but oneness here, rearranging. Intelligence rearranging itself in endless forms to which we then attribute names onto to make sense of reality. Thereby, then it says, thus, where is prarabdha karma for that which is unreal? Where is prarabdha karma for mithya? Because the moment you attribute prarabdha karma to this, the moment it changes, where's the prarabdha karma? It's gone. You see, you can only give past causes if you believe this is going to remain forever. It will not. Because the moment I squash it, and now it's a block. So now suppose we say past causes belong to the pot, to the pot, to the pot. And then I squash it. And I don't call it the pot anymore. Now it's a block. Where, to whom will the past causes go to? So this means for the longest amount of time, you believed you were the clay all along, you believed you were the pot, and thus you were there always available, waiting for things to go back to the pot, the pot, the pot, the pot. But all throughout, you were the very substance of the entire universe. And so again, why do we have Prarabdha teaching? Shankaracharya then says, it is merely a theory constructed for those beings who believe they are individuals. A theory, just a satisfying teaching saying, hey, you believe you're real? Okay, here's Prarabdha karma for you. You believe you're real? Here's free will for you. You believe you're real? Here's death for you. You believe you're real? Here's birth for you. And then he continues and he says, Shankaracharya says, the body is not there. There's no independently existing body. So now, knowing that, why are you counting stripes on a false snake? Why are you counting prarabdha and years that I have to live and how many more years I've got to survive? Why are you counting stripes on a false snake? The snake is not even there. That's your error. And now on top of your error, you're counting stripes. You're counting years to go. How many more years I have to live? He says, why? Forget about this foolishness. Forget about this prarabdha karma. Get into something serious. That's Adi Shankara's piercing words. And then he closes this understanding with verse 100 and he says, prarabdha is only a relative theory. Jnanena ajnana karyasya samulasya layaha yadi tishtati ayam katam dehaha iti shankavataha jadan samadhatum bahya drishtya prarabdham vadati shrutihi. And then he puts it all together. Here he says, the scripture speaks of prarabdha from the empirical standpoint to satisfy the curiosity of dull-witted people. Please highlight that. who want to know why the body remains in the wake of self-knowledge. Okay. Thereby, now the question arises, if a person gains self-knowledge, shouldn't their body disappear? Suppose you ask this. Shouldn't their mind disappear and all this disappear? Now, there's two answers according to Adi Shankara. It depends on who you're giving the answer to. If a ajnani asks this question, hey, if you're wise, then, who's speaking through this body? Shouldn't you now be, just relaxing in all pervasiveness? Then the jnani would say, okay, now who's asking this question? Now, suppose a basic person is asking this question. Then what will I say? I will say, well, when you switch off the fan continues to revolve for a short time longer. So when you gain self-knowledge, your mind continues to revolve a little while longer, because of that past momentum. So you say that this prarabdha karma, why does a wise person can have, suppose, a brilliant teaching, but they have hardly any students? And then you have someone that's not so good, that doesn't have a methodology, the teachings are partial, but they've got 1,000 students around the world, 2,000, 5,000 students. Why is that? Then you give a transactional answer because of their prarabdha karma. You see, it doesn't matter if a teacher might be brilliant at something. The popularity still counts. And they might not be so popular. Why? Because of their karma, past karma. And then you look at everyone else. These basic, simple teachings for children, at least how it's seen from this standpoint, and you got thousands of followers. You know, basic wisdom. How is this possible? Prarabdha karma. Can you do anything about it? No. That's your karma. And you just have to go through it. So the first answer is, why does a sage's body or prarabdha karma still exist? Because for transactionally, it still has to continue due to the momentum. Once that has started, that birth has started, it has to come to its own end. But then suppose you answer this for a wise person. Suppose you're operating a little bit, higher level. Then you give a different kind of answer. You say, you see, what are you asking about? Like, what are you asking about? You're saying, why is there prarabdha karma? Why is there still a person? Why is there still a body? Why is there still, why are you not elsewhere? Why are you not over there? Why are you still here? You see the problem with these questions? You see how many realities this person is giving? Over there, body is real, prarabdha is real. So in other words, for them, they are asking questions about a snake. But a wise person understands you're only asking questions about oneness. There's nothing, there's no otherness other than the one, other than intelligence reshuffling itself. And the truth of intelligence is awareness. So thereby, here, that prarabdha, just like the snake, it never existed. That was a theory initially taught to you to appease you. So the sage who recognizes that reality, like the rope, you recognize that, there's no question of prarabdha karma. There's no question of the past. There's no question of the future. There's only now. This moment. This is it. This is the reality. When you're in the airport, after the course ends, this is all there is. This is how it is. It's never been any different. There's no better out there to look forward to. There's no difference out there. You are experiencing yourself, nothing but yourself. And your own power is projecting these forms. And you're looking at your own forms and not knowing anymore, I then treat you as someone else. So for a moment, you're playing this game, the game of difference, which is okay. It's not going to end. But cognitively, you understand there is that underlying reality through and through all these forms. And that's where you find your reassurance, in that unity through all forms. Though it seems to be this one reality which is all shaping and molding itself into 1,000 different forms, you can appreciate that and respect the differences. But throughout that, I recognize there's only Ishvara here. There's no difference out there. This is it. And what moksha is just accepting this is life. This is what Ishvara is. There's no betterness out there. And that's freedom. Freedom when you just accept this is the moment, not worried about the future or the past. It's just one reality reshuffling itself, and that's what you're experiencing right now. And that is all your own projection from your own power called Maya. Your own power, called Maya, projects you, the person now sitting here, projects the teacher, and you're just looking at yourself right now. You're looking at yourself, the one who is pointing you back to yourself. And you're going, wow, how is this possible? It's possible. And so the teaching brings you back to none other than who you are, what you've always been. You have never been other than the self who is eternal, who never comes and goes, who has no consequences, who has no past causes, who has nothing on you. You are the spotless one. And when you live from that place, you relax. And you're able to be more clear and more deliberate with your actions. And being more deliberate, you make wiser choices. Still things happen, but you have a certain shock absorber that helps you cope with life's challenges. And so the vision becomes one of, very easy and very simple. And then you ask, why should I know about all these things? Why did I know about the universe and Maya and the 5 koshas? Because it was necessary. Only once you recognize the teaching, you slowly start to release that. And this whole Vedanta, it becomes thank you. That was Ishvara speaking to me. You have now helped me to find myself back, which was my journey all along. And it was worth it. The journey was worth it. And so this whole teaching makes you stop trying to trace these causal links. Why am I suffering right now? Why am I an individual suffering right now? You let go of this because we always want to analyze, why is this happening to me? This is happening. Let me address it. Let me do the best that I can. You're not an independent entity here, one little entity to whom things are happening. Nothing's happening to you. There's just happening in which there are characters playing their role. The character is not you. None of these characters are you. Just like a computer game in which the whole show is happening. Beautifully designed, well laid out, very convincing, but never forget that knowledge, striving and working its way through. There's no person inside you who's receiving karma. There's no one living is inside. There's no person living here. There's only one consciousness. And that consciousness is who you are, awareness. And so there's nowhere to go. You cannot ever die. You're only yourself. Always were yourself. And for a little while longer, we have to play this journey and pretend like you're a person, pretend like, things have to be worked out, pretend like you're dying, pretend like you're sick, pretend like you're, trying to work things out. There's a pretending. There's like a nice little acting here. But throughout that, you have that calm peace that everything is okay. There's nothing wrong here. Now the guru in the next section is going to finally reassure the student of the final words that he has to say. And he says 101, the conclusion, be rooted in Brahman. Vedanta Siddhanta Niruktihi Esha Brahma Eva Jivaha Sakalam Jagacha Akanda Rupa Stitihi Eva Mokshaha Brahma Advitiye Shruttayaha Pramanam. The Jiva as well as the entire world are Brahman alone. Liberation is only the staying in the knowledge of the partless nature of Brahman. Thus in brief is the conclusion of Vedanta. All the Shrutis are the Pramana, the means of knowledge with reference to the non-dual Brahman. In other words, there's no division between you and another individual, between you and the world, between you and Ishvara, between the world and Ishvara, between the world and you. There's no division whatsoever. They're just upadhis appearing for the time that they are appearing. And so you can also say things are appearing in awareness. That's another way to say it. There are only things are appearing in me. But eventually, I would like you to drop this teaching. Things are appearing in me. This is a provisional teaching, and I've heard teachers speak like this. There's only world, and these characters are appearing in me. This eventually goes away. You eventually say, all that is here is one without a second. So you kind of exclude this me thing out of the picture. And that is what moksha is. And what is moksha? It is like that constant drone of the tampura playing in the background. That constant zzz. But all the little sounds are happening on top of it. So it's that background of awareness that never leaves you. And that is the real you. You are never lost. And so this is what moksha is. You are permanently in touch with yourself as the very awareness. You never are away from that awareness. And then it continues into 102. Now here the student is very happy. He says, I'm free from the shark of transmigration. Danyaha aham krityaha aham vimuktaha aham bhava grahat. Nitya ananda swarupaha aham purnaha aham tvat anugrahat. O teacher, due to your grace I am blessed. I am the one who has accomplished all that is to be accomplished. I am released from the hold of samsara. I am of the nature of Ananda, free from the lack and always there. I am the whole. This is a student's final words to the Guru. In other words, you have completed me. And he says, I have accomplished all that is to be accomplished. I am utterly fulfilled, teacher. You have given me. I have sought. No more future events to look forward to. I have everything here and now. And he says, Nitya Ananda Svarupaha Purna. I am that very wholeness and fullness right now. My nature is that. And I recognize that nature. Thank you. And then he demonstrates humility. Very important. He says, I am free of that ignorance now. I am that very reality, that very bliss, that very wholeness. I am that. And then he says, because of why? Because of your grace. See, this helps the student not to mix up and take pride and ownership of this accomplishment. By your grace, teaching, by your grace, teachers, by your grace, Adi Shankara, by your grace, Ishvara, I have accomplished the highest. And then the Guru now says, 106, Guruhu evam sada ananda sindhau nirmagna manasaha pavayan vasudham sarvam vichachara nirantaram. And the teacher alone, again but in eternal ananda, his mind immersed in the ocean of that ananda, blessing everyone wherever he or she goes in the world, continues his wanderings once again. Continues teaching, continues giving, not motivated by the sense of recognition or something I want for myself. There is nothing to give to fullness. Fullness is fullness. And thus the Guru then leaves and does not experience a sense of loss when the students also leave. Because the Guru continues to teach others who also need this journey for themselves, who are willing to pay attention. And finally, 108, what is the author's aim? Samsara advani tapa bhanu kirana prodbhuta daha yatha kinnanam jalakankshaya marubhuvi brantya paribramyatam atyasana sudha ambuddhim sukha karam brahma advayam darshayati esham shankara bharati vijayate nirvana sandayini. These liberating words of Shankara quench the existential thirst of those seeking relief from the scorching sun, rays of the sun of samsara. Now this is a powerful imagery he gives, the last verse. He says the desert of samsara is like the scorching sun. This desert of samsara and the scorching sun. And he compares here the desert to a world of change, where nothing can last forever. He says, all that is here is fleeting pleasures, changes, and this world is compared to a vast, waterless desert. The world that you live in, the world that you go in, the airport, vast, waterless desert. Your room up there, okay, everything. Vast, waterless desert. Why? Because in such a desert, everything that you grab onto, can you extract any water that you're desperately looking to quench your thirst by? Any grain you pick up, there's nothing there. And that grain was your savior, that relationship, that little, accomplishment, that career, all of that was just like grains of sand that I was desperately looking to quench my thirst. And additionally, he says, you're in this desert of just grains of sand without water, but additionally you have the scorching sun. Now the scorching sun gives you three types of pains. It gives you inner pain, that's psychological pain, adhyatmika. It gives you adhibautika, pain from other people. And it gives you adhidaivika, pain from natural causes, natural forces, high weather, cancelled flights, and so on. And so the scorching sun becomes a constant burden, a constant pain. And as a result, you're further dehydrated, exhausted. There's nowhere to quench my thirst. And you are like that traveler in the desert who just wants, to drink a little bit of water to satiate your thirst. But no matter what you do, no grain of sand has one bit of water. And those desirous of drinking that water, he continues, roam about desperately searching for it, because all you have is a desert. An ignorant person only sees mirages of water. The mirage is not a real thing. And so when they run over to the mirage, they get disappointed, only hoping for the next relationship, the next kick, the next thing. All of them are but mirages, none of them giving you that lasting, stable satisfaction. And when you realize this is the birth of vairagyam, dispassion. When you realize the world is like a desert with a scorching sun, no matter how much I try to extract out of this world, I get disappointed and I get only sometimes even bitter. And so coming to this place, what does this book then do for you? What's the solution? The pages of this book, in this book lies the nectar which promises to quench your thirst of that supreme Brahman. And what is this nectar? The nectar is Viveka Chudamani, or Brahma Vidya, self-knowledge. And through this knowledge, it obliterates all this suffering which I was looking, or a consequence of looking for happiness inside a desert. And so, and what does it show you? It shows you there was no real difference between me and the reality. That difference was only notional in my mind. Having removed that notion, I am now one with myself. In other words, you were always swimming in yourself. You were never away from what you were seeking. And so you realize, wow, I am that very water that I was looking for. I was looking for the water out there, but the water was right here and now. And therefore the seeker and the sought are one. And this is the aim of Shankaracharya's glorious teaching, that reality you are in this very moment. And this concludes Viveka Chudamani. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.